With a few more complex fractions. So notice how again I have a fraction and another fraction on the bottom here. So you have this numerator that has fractions, you have this denominator that has fractions. So our first move to simplify is we need to identify those denominators. So again, to simplify this, we're looking at these denominators here. So on the top fraction, we're seeing this m minus 3 and this m minus 4 as your common denominators, or your denominators. On the bottom, we see this m squared and this m minus 3. So it looks like I have really just three different denominators. I have an m minus 4, I have an m minus 3, and I have an m squared. And that looks like an m minus 3 just repeats again. So we only have three different denominators. So my LCD is going to be this m squared, this m minus 3, and this m minus 4. So what I'm going to do is multiply the top and bottom by this common denominator. That actually becomes my least common denominator, believe it or not. So what we'll do is multiply this top and this bottom by this expression. So I'm going to multiply the top by m squared, and you're going to have a m minus 3 and an m minus 4 here. On the bottom, we're going to multiply all this by the same thing, m squared times m minus 3 times m minus 4. Because remember, when you multiply the top and bottom by the same thing, that's essentially multiplying by 1. So we're not changing its value. It's still going to represent the same thing. It's just going to look a little different. So when we do this, what we pick up on is this, when I multiply this to this term here, the m minus 3's are going to drop out of the problem. So that leaves me this 16, and I have that m squared still there, and that m minus 4 is still there. So the m minus 3 drops out, but the 16, the m squared, and m minus 4 become the numerator of this piece. Minus then, got that minus sign there, the m minus 4 divides out of this one, so I have that 4, I have that m squared, and I have that m minus 3. So that's the only thing left on the top now. Those fractions are now out of the problem. Now in this piece, the m squared divides out, so I have a 16 times m minus 3 times m minus 4. So that m squared will divide out, that 16 stays, that m minus 3 and m minus 4 come into the problem. I have my minus sign. The m minus 3 divides out, so what I have left is still that m squared. I have an m minus 4, and I have another m minus 4. Notice I can kind of change the order since this is multiplication. So the m minus 3 will divide out. I like to go ahead and bring the m squared first, and I like to keep these two terms here next to each other. So now we got some work to do. So I got to kind of multiply this out. So I'm going to start with just bring the 16 in, and I'm going to just multiply the m squared to the m. I can use that distributive property. M squared times m would be m to the third. And then m squared times that negative 4 is going to be a negative 4m squared. Over here, again, I'm going to leave that 4 out. And I'm going to multiply m squared through that, so it's going to give me m squared times m would be m to the third, minus then m squared times negative 3 would be just negative 3m squared. So I still got to multiply through the parentheses. So 16 times m cubed is 16m cubed. And I have 16 times negative 4m squared is going to be negative 64m squared. And I have to bring this negative 4 through, so negative 4 times m cubed is negative 4m cubed. And I have that negative 4 times that negative 3m squared is going to be a 12m squared. It looks like the top can still go further because m cubed and m cubed is going to work, so those coefficients go together. A 16 and a negative 4 is going to give me a 12m cubed. So it's 16m cubed and that negative 4m cubed. So 16 and negative 4 gives me my negative 12. So negative 12m cubed. I'm sorry. The bigger number is positive, so it's actually going to be a 12m cubed. So the bigger number is positive. So negative 64m squared and a 12m squared, those are like terms. So negative 64 and a 12, I'm going to lose there. That's going to give me a negative 52m squared. So since the bigger number was negative, that's going to remain negative. So I took care of working through this top part. The bottom part, I have the 16, but I still got to work with this m minus 3 times m minus 4. So it looks like I'm going to just get rid of this problem altogether. I need some workspace. We'll have to do that one later. So I have m minus 3 times m minus 4 has to be done. So m and negative 3 and an m and negative 4. I can partition that off. M times m is m squared. M times negative 4 is negative 4m. Negative 3 times m is negative 3m. And negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. So it looks like this is going to turn into that 16, and I'm going to have m squared. These two terms become a negative 7m. And then I have that plus 12. So m minus 3 times m minus 4 turns into this. I still got to multiply by 16, but I'm going to hold off on that. This over here, I'm going to keep that m squared out for the time being. I'm going to go ahead and multiply that m minus 4 times that m minus 4. So m and a negative 4 and an m and negative 4. So m times m is m squared. M times negative 4 is negative 4m. Negative 4 times m is negative 4m. And negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. So this m minus 4 times m minus 4 transitions into then I have an m squared. Then a negative 4m and a negative 4m gives me my negative 8m. And then I have that plus 16. So now I'm going to bring my fraction bar over here. I want to go ahead and remove those parentheses out of the problem. So 16 times m squared is 16m squared. 16 times a negative 7, well, I need to do some math there. 16 times a 7. 7 times 6 is 42, carry the 4. Is that 112? So 16 times a negative 7 will be a negative 112 m. And then 16 times 12, looks like I need to do that math. So 16 times 12. 2 times 6 is 12, carry by 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 32. 0 in. And 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. Looks like that's going to be 182. So 16 times that positive 12 is going to be a positive 182. Now I got to bring this negative m squared through. So negative m squared times m is going to be a negative m cubed. Because remember, that's just a bunch of multiplication, m times m times m. So that's just going to be negative m cubed. Negative m squared, let's see here, that should be an m squared, shouldn't it? Sorry about that. M squared there. So m squared, negative m squared times m squared would be m to the 4th power. So negative m squared times m squared would actually be a negative m to the 4th power. Forgot to bring that m squared in there, didn't I? There we go. Now I have negative m times negative 8. Excuse me. Be a positive 8m to the 3rd power. And then I have a minus 16m squared. So now we're trying to combine like terms. It looks like 16m squared and negative 16m squared divide out, or 0 out, I should say. So 16m squared and negative 16m squared 0 out. So it looks like I have this negative m to the 4th. I have this 8m cubed. I have this negative 112m. And I have this 182. And that's as far as we want to take it for the time being. There's probably maybe more we can do with it. Interesting how much math can be involved in a problem. Easy to get lost as well, as you can kind of see. But we're going to call this our final answer. I have a 12m cubed minus 52m squared on the top. I have a negative m to the fourth plus 8m cubed. I have a negative 112m and a 182 on that bottom. So we'll leave those examples like that, and stay tuned.